So when I say the word examination, what comes to mind? For the students or former students in the room, the first thing you think about is exams. No student enjoys taking tests. You know, some exams are easier than others. I always like the true-false questions and the multiple choice. I especially like the open book exams. They were great. They're a lot easier than essays or case studies or oral exams, or just like I recently finished a big 40-page, I think I did 50-plus pages of a research paper. That was a lot of fun. Many of you cringe at the thought of an examination because you immediately think of the doctor's office. How many of you thought of a doctor's office when I said examination? Now, when your kids are young, or even in their teenage years, an examination at the doctor's office is usually not super intrusive. What do they call those? Well checks a lot of times. And normally you take them in because they have a sore throat maybe, or the flu, it could be a high fever. But if your child has something more serious going on, a more thorough examination has to be made. And that's always frightening, isn't it? Now, as you get older, oh, I love getting older. It's fun, I'm telling you. The examinations, they get a lot more intrusive, don't they? Yeah. There's one particular exam I'm just so excited to have. Yeah, that's great. And then you get to go see the cardiologist sometimes, right? And he explains, this is where the problem is in your heart. And for some of you that don't have a heart, they don't have to explain that to you. If you have a hard time breathing, which how many of you have the allergies that we all have? Oh my Lord, there's so many of us. You go in sometimes for what we call a pulmonary examination. That's pretty intense. When you have aches and pains in your back or your knee or your hips, you go to the appropriate doctor for the appropriate examination. I remember Marcia had to go to a doctor, and she had this shoulder issue, and they had to put a shot exactly in the right area in the joint. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. And I won't even go into the types of examinations that you poor women have to go through. I will just say this right now. I am so thankful I'm a man. I'm just telling you right now. Now, while examinations are rarely enjoyable, they are necessary. And periodically, a thorough examination must be performed in order to stay healthy. You know, ignoring a health concern won't make it go away. It'll only get worse. I will share, this isn't in my notes, but I'll give you an example. My mother would ignore all of her health concerns until she had really bad situations going on. And so if you do that, here's a note from Pastor Mason, which is go to the doctor and make sure you go and get those examinations. You know, the last 3 months, we have worked through the first 3 steps of Forever Free. And working through these 3 steps to the best of your ability, it develops a very strong, firm foundation. It's during step 1 that you come out of denial and you admit that there is a problem. In fact, you come to grips with the gravity of the situation. You come into terms with the unmanageability of your life. And then in step 2, you begin to look at yourself and you look at your spiritual health. And it's during this step that you acknowledge that there is a power greater who can restore the chaos in your life. How many people had a lot of chaos when you walked through the doors? And there are some of you right now, it's funny, 3 hands went up. That should have been every person in the room, right? I'm glad you're still in denial. Yeah. Here at Forever Free, we know that the power greater, what's his name? Jesus Christ. Then in step 3, you take a significant action step and you make the decision to turn your life and your will over to Jesus. This is where you begin to develop trust, and you allow him to direct your life and your actions. Jesus becomes your Savior and the Lord of your life. And once you've built this strong foundation, you're ready for the next step. Now, I tell people this all the time. I always laugh about this. When we get to step 4, people are so nervous. In fact, I made the mistake of telling people I was preaching about step 4 today. Because step 4 is where we make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of step 4, let's break this step into bite-sized pieces. Let's first answer the question that most of you are asking. In fact, I think people who have been in recovery forever sometimes wonder, what exactly is searching and fearless? What does that mean? Searching and fearless means thorough. That's really what it is. It's a thorough examination. So let's change the wording of the step and let's use it this way. We make a thorough moral inventory of ourselves. A thorough, and that's kind of hard to say all those words at once. But what that means is we dig deep. You know, oftentimes we want to pretend all the bad stuff that we did didn't occur, don't we? Or minimize it. Now, let's answer the next obvious question. What does moral inventory mean? A moral inventory is a deep dive into your past and your present to uncover all the ways you've wronged and hurt yourself and others. That's what it is. A moral inventory is a thorough examination of yourself. Does that make it more simple? And that's why this message is entitled Thorough Examination. Lamentations 3:40 says, "Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord." And by doing a thorough inventory, you will discover the sources of your dysfunction and these coping mechanisms that we use. Frankly, the drugs and the alcohol and the sex and the people and the shopping and all that, that's not the problem. It's all that underlying garbage that causes us to do those things. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Now, before we get started, let me share with you the tools of the trade as you do your 4th step. First of all, you're going to need a notebook or a journal. Okay, journals, I think a journal is a great way to do it. A simple notebook. I mean, I've got dozens of notebooks that I've used to do inventories, but get something to write with, okay? You're going to want to have a Bible. This is my favorite Bible to utilize when you're in recovery. It's the Life Recovery Bible. They're $22. You can get them here. And it is the most helpful book. In fact, this is absolutely going to transform your life, and it's going to help you in your recovery, so get yourself a Bible. And so those are really the 2 things that you're going to need the most right now. And then if you're going to do a thorough 4th step, you're going to want to do this. You're going to want to do a process group and get this book right here. And here's the deal. Process groups, you want to talk about rock your world, they will rock your world. And so if you have not signed up for one, go to our website at forever-free.net. That you click on the About. I can't remember what page it's on, but anyway, it says process groups. Click there, register for a process group, get started. It'll change your life. Then you can put your excuse book away of why you're so messed up. Right? Because now you're doing something about it. All right. Now, here's the other thing. The other thing that is really, really, really important is coffee. Get some really good coffee. Anytime you're doing a 4th step, you've got to have good coffee. And don't drink that yucky stuff. There's a new brand, a place here in town. It's the worst coffee on the planet. Get some real coffee. Okay, there we go. All right. All right, now that I've got that off my chest, you know, that was part of my next inventory, by the way. And so I got that off my chest already. I hate it when people drink bad coffee. All right. Now let me also address the elephant in the room. that most of you have heard, which is how horrible the fourth step is. Now, I'm going to give you 3 what I call pre-inventory steps, and I think I listed those in your outline. So get your outline out now, because you'll want to make notes of this, okay? Hey, by the way, is there anybody that did not get an outline? Raise your hand if you didn't. You're going to need one. So run around, keep your hands up. Anybody over here? I know there's several of you because you never take notes. So, by the way, I notice things. You probably don't notice that I notice, but I do notice. All right. So every time that you work in inventory, you're going to want to do this pre-inventory prep. And listen, it'll help you to experience less discomfort as you go through the process. It's important that, first of all, that you set the tone. So what you want to do is you want to find a quiet, comfortable space where you have little or no distractions. Now, some of you say, listen, Layne, I have children, and there is never a comfortable, quiet place in my house. So for you, what I suggest that you do is you go ahead and wait until they go to bed, or get up early in the morning to do your step work, because that's when you're going to have a little bit of a break, because obviously you need to have that. This will enable you to concentrate and focus on your thoughts. And then take the first pre-inventory step, which is worship. Turn on some worship music. And I'm not talking, look, guys, I know that there's some worship, they call it worship music, that's kind of high energy, all that. No, you want something that's going to get you really in the presence of Jesus. So there's a lot of things I love. And if you want to know some of that music, we'll put, we maybe can even put you together a 4-step worship list of songs. Because you need to get in the presence of Jesus, okay? Turn on the music, spend a few minutes worshiping the Lord, and then your worship will open the door for the second step, which is then you pray. You need to pray. Spend the next several minutes thanking God for what He's about to do in your life. Ask Him to clear your mind and get any distractions that are out, and give you insight as you work this life-transforming step. And after you've spent some time in worship and prayer, you're ready for the last inventory step, which is make a gratitude list. Now, some of you are saying, wait a minute, that's weird. Why would I do that? Why would I start out? Because I'm going to tell you, sometimes what happens is because you do some heavy-duty work that really kind of weighs you down. When you started out looking at the things that you're grateful for and thankful for, it changes your whole mindset as you go through the process. List the things that you're grateful for. And if you're working on your 4th step for 4 or 5 days, do it every single time. Use these 3 steps every single time you start your 4th step, and I promise you, it'll change everything. You won't dread doing your 4th step. More than likely, you're going to spend a few hours working on your inventory. So every time you do it, make sure you follow that. Now, let's get to the heart of this message. Tonight, I'm going to give you very practical instructions on how to start and complete a thorough moral inventory. You received the bulletin. Obviously, you have your outlines, so please do me a favor and follow along. The first step of your inventory is reflect on your life. Reflect on your life. Look at the past and the present. Look at the positive and the negative experiences. So I want you to start with your childhood. That's a great place to start. The way you grew up had a significant effect on how you perceive and you process things. As a child, you learn from what you experience, see, and you hear. And some of you experience some bad things. But you got to go back there, and you've got to look at that. And ask yourself some questions. What was your relationship like with your mom and dad? Did you feel loved? Did you feel nurtured when you were little? Do you remember any specific traumatic or bad events? What were your friendships like? Did you feel like you fit in with your friends? Who were your biggest influences? Did you spend time with the good kids, or did you hang out with the kids who like to get in trouble? What was your background like? I mean, your faith background like? Did you attend church on a consistent basis? Was God a kind, loving God? Or did you view him as a harsh judge? Did you experience any abuse or trauma in your life? Were you self-confident, or did you feel very insecure? Now, there's a lot more questions you can ask, okay? But delve into that. Now, I realize this is going to be somewhat painful. But here's what I want you to understand. You have to do this. And then what I want you to do is write down notes on that. And it'll change. It'll give you a really good start. And then after you've reflected on your childhood, move on to your adolescence. During your adolescent years is where many character defects start rearing their ugly heads. It's important to ask probing questions here. Here's a few. Did you have friends as an adolescent, or were you kind of a loner? What kind of friend were you to others? That's an important question. Did you enjoy school? What was your social life like? Did you participate in sports and creative activities? Did you go to school activities such as dances and sporting events? Did you feel judged by others? Did you develop resentments for not being part of a crowd? Did you suffer intensely from insecurities? I don't know about you, but that's where a lot of my insecurities started. Did you tell lies about yourself or your family to make yourself look good? Were you envious or jealous of others? Were you popular, or were you an outcast in your eyes? Did you make the mistake of starting dating in junior high or high school too early? If not, were you jealous of those who did? Did this create resentments in your life as you compared? And that's the other one that I didn't say on there. Did you play the comparison game? Did drugs, sex, pornography, people-pleasing, or any other behavior begin to interfere in your life? Is there anything that you don't want to write down about in your childhood or adolescence? If so, write it down. Those are the very things you need to write down. Kind of heavy, huh? Some of you are going, man, I'm glad I came tonight. But here's what I want you to know. I'm pause for a second. If you go through this process, what ends up happening is those things that have been weighing you down for all these years will suddenly not have the grip they have in your life. And you'll be able to rid yourself of all of that. Because if you keep hiding it and keeping it buried, I promise you, it's just going to keep rearing its ugly head. So let's get rid of it. And then after you've examined your childhood and your adolescence, it's time to reflect on your adulthood. Reflect on your career, your education, your personal achievements. Explore your emotions, both positive and negative. And here's some questions to ask yourself here. Are you afraid of getting too close to another person? Or do you fear rejection? Are you a good, encouraging friend, or are you a big old gossip? Do you find yourself rejecting others before they reject you? Some of you do that, don't you? If a relationship looks like, between men or women, looks like there might be a relationship developing, you run, right? Are you good or bad at relationships? I can answer that for most of you right now, right? I know I was bad at it. Do you gossip about others, or are you an encourager? Do you use people for what you want? Are you ashamed of your body or the way you look? Do you worry all the time? And what do you worry about? Yeah, write these things down. Are you cold and indifferent to family, friends, and coworkers? Are you loaded with a sense of guilt for harming your family and friends because of your bad behaviors? Listen, if you've done horrible things to others, we can really feel like we'll never, ever be able to make that up. Do you believe you've done so much that you can't be forgiven? Do you have secrets that you're ashamed of and you feel like you have to keep hidden? List everything that you swore that you would take to the grave. List all of those things on your inventory. Then, identify character defects and shortcomings. You know, some of the questions you ask about your life will reveal several of these character defects and shortcomings. It's important to be honest with yourself, and these could be behaviors, they can be attitudes, they can be actions that have caused harm to yourself or others. And ask God to illuminate these shortcomings. I love Psalm 139:23. We use it often here. It says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart, and try me, and know my thoughts." Ask God to just illuminate them for you. Now, also, you notice I got about a book in here, don't I? But you notice that I have an insert that will help you to identify your character defects. And we use this a lot. This is fantastic. What I want you to do, this will help you to go through a full examination of yourself, a thorough examination. You can't rid yourself of your shortcomings if you don't first identify them. After you've identified them, examine how these defects have contributed to your current challenges in your life. So do this. You notice on the back it says, "My biggest character defects are," and write them down. Write them down. One of you said this earlier. He said, "I think there's about every one on there." Really, it's not, but this is a good start. Right? All right, that's good. I can tell how excited you all are tonight. I'm about half tempted to have you all stand up, and we'll do calisthenics for a couple minutes. Take a little break, and we'll just do this. Okay. All right. All right. Next, examine how your actions and behaviors have affected others. Now, this is where you begin to take responsibility for the harm that you've caused. You know, Genesis 6:5 says, "For we are each responsible for our own conduct." This is an incredibly important step. Instead of ignoring and minimizing, you take ownership of your actions and your behaviors. So you begin by listing the people that you've hurt. This can be family members, friends, coworkers, romantic interests. And after you've listed them all by name, one by one, write down specifically what you did to harm each of them. Now, I told you earlier that step 4 is where you do a thorough examination. This means a very comprehensive, complete, and even painstaking examination of the harms you've committed. So ask these additional questions. Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where was I at fault? Was I at fault by being selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? What was the relationship that I was in? Was it selfish? Was I selfish in this relationship? You know, just ask probing questions. It's super, super important. And then, what should I have done instead? That's another great question. So the point of this is, again, it's owning your part. You know, we say that a lot around here. Own your part. And then after you've examined your life from childhood to adulthood, you've identified your character defects and examined the effect that those actions have had on others, examine your resentments and grudges that you've developed. Now, this is where you reflect on why you hold on to these feelings and how they might be impacting your life. Write down the names of the people or institutions that you hold resentments towards. Now, let me give you some examples of people. This could be your father, your mother, maybe your step-parents. It could be your sisters, your brothers, your step-siblings. It might be your aunts, your uncles, cousins, or in-laws. It could be your husband, your wife, or your ex. It could be clergy from the church that you used to attend or are currently attending. For some of you, it might be police, lawyers, judges, parole officers, probation officers. It can even be your doctor or your employer. You know, maybe it's some of you, the coworkers. Do you ever have somebody you work with you just want to smack? Right? Right? Okay. I know. Pastor Layne says some things other pastors don't say, right? But it's true, right? I don't have those. I work in a church. I have wonderful coworkers. I do. I'm really fortunate. But my last job, holy smokes. It might be creditors or teachers. You might have resentments toward childhood friends or school friends. You may hold a resentment from somebody that gave you a bloody nose when you were 7. Maybe even a best friend, or it could just be an acquaintance. It might even be friends you have in recovery. Whoever it is, write those names down, okay? If it's the person sitting next to you, you might want to shield it, right? Now, institutions could include the institution of marriage. Sometimes, man, you don't like that whole, if you've gone through a divorce, that can be really difficult. It can be the Bible, believe it or not. It can be church, it can be religion. It can be laws and authorities and races. It can be nationalities. It can be governments. It can be the educational system. For many of you, it's the correctional system. It can be various mental health systems or a philosophy. Whatever institution you have a resentment or a grudge against, write it down. You might even have resentments against God. Maybe even Jesus. I've known of people who have resentments against Satan. Some have resentments against death, or the concept of life after death, the concept of heaven and hell, the golden rule, the 10 commandments. Religion religiosity is another thing, can certainly lead to resentments. Those religious people, who are very judgmental, and you have a big resentment. Whatever it is, whether it's people, institutions, or principles, make sure you write down those names. And then write down, why am I angry? Why am I angry at this institution? It's also important to discover what part of yourself, yourself was hurt or threatened by this person or institution. Was it your self-esteem? Was it your pride? Was it emotional security? Was it your pocketbook? Was it ambitions? Was it relationships? Was it sex relationships? And then ask yourself, where was I to blame? Instead of pointing the finger, now it's time to look at you. Was I being dishonest? Was I being selfish? Was I being self-seeking? Was I frightened? Was I inconsiderate? Do you see what I'm talking about? This is a thorough examination. This is like going into the doctor and saying, man, I want you to check every single thing in my body. And you know why you do that? So that you can discover what's wrong with you. That's the purpose. Why do I keep doing the things that I keep doing? Why do I date the same loser over and over? Why do I keep going to drugs and sex and the things that I know that aren't going to turn out right? You've got to discover the whys. You know what? You have to rid yourself of these resentments, because if you don't, it's like drinking poison. They will eat you from the inside out, and they'll come out as a relapse. Listen to Leviticus 19:18. It says, "Do not seek revenge or bear a judge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself." And I love this. Then he goes, "I am the Lord." That means it's a command. And here's the last step of your moral inventory. Examine your fears. Identify all of your fears, the rational ones and the irrational ones. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? It might be a person or institution. It could be a principle. Here's some examples. Some of you fear God. Some of you fear dying. A lot of you fear rejection or loneliness. Some of you are scared to death of diseases. That's why I think a lot of people wear masks now. I mean, good Lord, they've got like triple masks, and it's 4 years later, right? I mean, because they're scared. Some of you are afraid of alcohol and drugs and relapses. I think you do need to have some healthy fears of that. Some of you fear authority. You fear losing a family member, or you fear police or jail, doctors, hospitals, creditors, failure or success, intimacy, confrontation, sobriety or responsibility. I mean, we could go on and on. And some of you know what you really fear? You fear change. You wonder, what is life going to be like when I get rid of all of this stuff? How am I ever going to cope when I don't have that phone and those images? How will I ever make it? You fear change. And I want you to, this is the Lord speaking to you seriously right now. You don't have to fear change, because He's going to change you for the good. You're going to be transformed by the blood of Jesus Christ. So embrace this process. After you've identified your fears, then ask yourself, why do I have fear? Why am I afraid? Then identify what part of your life that fear affects. Sometimes fear, it can affect your self-esteem, your pride, your emotional security, your same things that a lot of things do, your pocketbook, your ambitions. And consider how those fears have influenced your decisions and behaviors. This is for somebody watching online right now. Your fear to leave your home is keeping you stuck. It's time to get out, and it's time to become a part of the community. And I think you need to. Again, it's important to put pen and paper and write your fears down. And then after you get those fears on paper, ask God to do a work to remove those unhealthy fears and that have negatively influenced your life. Listen to this. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Listen, I know that attempting to do a thorough examination of yourself by doing a moral inventory strikes fear in the most brave of hearts. But you're not doing this alone. Recovery is a team sport. It's awesome. Some of you don't like sports, and you're already involved in one. It's called recovery. It's a team sport. We do it together. And we do it with Jesus at the center of our lives. God will walk with you every step of the way. And so will your sponsor and your accountability partners. Listen to Deuteronomy 31:6. It says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them. For it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you. He will not forsake you." You have nothing to fear. Although a searching and fearless moral inventory can be somewhat unpleasant, the end result is worth all of the discomfort. And I want to conclude this message with this promise from page 75 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They call it the fourth step promise. Listen to this. It says, "We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator." So don't be afraid. Dive in and do a thorough examination of your life. You'll begin the process of ridding yourself of guilt and shame and start to experience peace, and you'll alleviate your fears. But most importantly, guess what happens? You'll experience Jesus. Will you do me a favor? Will you rise to your feet right now? I want us to do something that some of you probably have never done. Will you do me a favor? Will you simply do this? Say, "Jesus." Let's do it. Jesus. Jesus. Jesus, I need you. Speak the name of Jesus tonight as we worship the King.